abundance of energy, peace, and hearts always full of love. We know that practicing Thich meditation is a process where we develop the ability to be awake or mindful, because our lives are going in a different direction, and in that direction we tend to grasp at the more and more external objects, those attractive objects that bring temporary benefits. The more, the better, and in that way we live very hastily, very frantically, and often experience stress and fatigue. And we follow a common perception of society that happiness is a destination. We always set out plans, projects and goals for us to rush towards and grasp. And throughout that process, as we grasp at those objects, we don't truly live, we aren't happy. We live in stress, fatigue, and much suffering. And from there, the quality of our lives declines each day. And while we set out many desires, often they're beyond our capacity, and sometimes they're not suitable. And once we set out certain desires, other desires arise. Many desires occur at the same time, so we don't have enough energy to handle everything. And from there, our energy declines and our quality of life decreases. We're no longer full of energy, we're no longer lovely, gentle, kind, or humble. We're no longer clear-minded, wise, awake, or precise. We're no longer decisive or agile. We're no longer present. And when our inner quality declines, the quality of our lives also declines. All our relationships decline, and the quality of our work also declines. And from there, the quality of life, meaning the values of peace, happiness, and love, also decline. So practicing Thich meditation is a different way of life, a way of life that the Buddha called mindful living. Instead of rushing to the shore to reach the shore, the Buddha advises us to enjoy the journey to the shore, to find ways to survive, to live steadily, healthily, with much peace and happiness on the way to the shore. How can we make every point on the way to the shore as important as the shore itself? We'll figure out what to do when we get to the shore, but for now, before we get to the shore, we still have many conditions for happiness to grasp and hold on to. And even when we reach the shore, we'll see that the shore isn't as attractive as the values we've already had. We've experienced this many times. We thought it was very attractive, but once we got it, we saw it was just normal. So we have to learn that hard-earned lesson. We have to be very aware of that, to set fewer overly attractive goals from afar, and not abandon the values of happiness that we have in the present. Of course, we have the right to set goals, and we should set goals, but when we set out goals, we shouldn't only focus on those goals and forget the other values around us. And in the process of going towards that goal, we must remember that the goal is only a part of life, a part of the conditions for happiness. We go towards the goal, we go to the shore as someone who already has many conditions for happiness and wants more happiness, not as someone who has nothing to be happy about, and only by grasping the goal will we have happiness. If we think that we have nothing to be happy about, and only when we reach the shore will we have happiness, then we'll go very hastily, disregarding all means, overcoming every obstacle that affects our fame and career. In pursuing our goals, we often sacrifice relationships, and when we achieve B, we turn around to find no one left. All relationships have crumbled. Where's the happiness when we're left adrift and isolated with a B? And if we get tired of B, who will be there for us? How will we live? Should we set our sights on C? If we continue like this, even if we achieve C, D, and countless other goals, the happiness will only be temporary. We've often discussed and agreed that what allows us to feel happiness isn't necessarily B or external goals. All these external factors only play a supporting role. At best, they help us satisfy basic needs like food, shelter, sleep, connection, and love. But what truly allows us to feel happiness is what's within us, our heart, our soul, our mind. Therefore, on the path to awareness, preserve your soul, preserve your mind. Don't let it shatter, fall apart, become tired, stressed, depressed, anxious, or suffer a mental breakdown after achieving B. What's the point? You won't feel happiness. The Buddha said, if you look deeply, stop and look deeply, you'll realize that every moment of life is an opportunity for happiness without necessarily achieving the goals we set for ourselves. Happiness is a journey, a process, not a destination. Don't hope or wait for it in 3 or 5 years. We've been there before. We used to dream that if we had this, that, and the other thing, at least these 3 things, we would be happy. But now we have them, so why aren't we happy? Should we set more? How can we trust that when we already have so many conditions for happiness, yet we aren't happy? How can we trust that setting more conditions will bring us happiness? Is the problem external or is it internal? So when we meditate, it means we're starting to live mindfully, live slowly. Don't worry that living slowly will make you fall behind others. We need quality. Drinking a cup of tea for 3 or 5 minutes with quality, less, but with quality. We don't need to drink many cups of tea. We don't need to drink tea, then coffee, then eat dessert. We don't need to grasp many things. That only satisfies cravings. But if we drink a cup of tea properly, sitting upright and calmly, savoring each sip, feeling each aroma and flavor, with loved ones beside us, on a beautiful morning, listening to birds sing, watching flowers bloom with a peaceful mind, then naturally happiness arises. It's strange like that. We prepare our minds to not be chaotic or grasping. We train it to sit still and deeply connect with everything. When it connects deeply, it understands that this is nourishing us, that this is a condition for happiness, and then it's happy. But when it connects superficially or sees without truly seeing, you might lift the teacup without really lifting it, just grabbing it and pouring it down your throat, pouring water down your throat instead of drinking it. Or we shovel food into our mouths to fill our stomachs without chewing, without truly eating. Because when we eat, we must savor it. And to savor it, we must have feeling. And to have feeling, we must slow down. And to slow down, we must stop grasping. We've grasped a lot and haven't found happiness. So try following the Buddha's guidance. Stop grasping for a week. There are things we'll miss. Once it's out there, you have to catch it. If you've thrown the spear, you have to follow it. We have to accept it. But there are things that haven't been launched, thrown, or placed yet. If you're seeking things, try a week without seeking. Lie very slowly for a week. Of course, we can't be slow all the time because we have to work and interact, but we can mark out areas where we can be absolutely slow and areas where we can be moderately slow. There are areas where we slow down as much as we can and areas where we just live as usual. Usually, the areas where it's hard to slow down are where we interact with colleagues, bosses, and customers. But if we practice skillfully and have experience, then right there, we can still slow down, even if it's just for a minute. Take advantage of that minute. In that minute, slow down to return to your breath, to relax, and to pay attention. Pay attention to every movement and gesture. If possible, just sit still and breathe. If that's not possible, just pay attention to your activities. Even when you're talking, start slowing down. Speak at a moderate pace, hearing each word clearly. Know whether you're speaking fast or slow. See your intentions. You're saying this, but it's jumping to that. And see your emotions when you talk to that person. Your emotions, whether you like it or not, are very clear. That moment is called a moment of meditation, because meditation isn't just sitting meditation. Meditation is an awakening in which you can observe in detail every line, every object it comes into contact with. Sometimes it only observes in general. When we observe in general, it feels comfortable and light, but often it misses important details. We won't be able to achieve accuracy. So sometimes we'll look deeper to see more layers, more inside, see the details of the object more. Then we'll understand the object more clearly and no longer be confused. So practicing meditation means you start setting up a camera for yourself and start observing yourself in it. Observe every movement and gesture in it. Observe every feeling, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, that's passing through you in it. You start observing every psychological development, every fit of anger, every sadness, every loneliness, every craving, every envy. And when your mind starts to stir, starts to rise up, you've already detected it. That's a good meditator. A good meditator doesn't necessarily have no afflictions. Of course, with long practice, you'll isolate afflictions or transform quite a few of them. But when you're just starting to practice, it's impossible not to have afflictions. But as a new meditator, you have a special ability that you didn't have before you practiced or that people who don't practice don't have. That's the timely awareness to recognize the presence of affliction. And when you see affliction present, if you're a good meditator, you dare to invest in caring for affliction. Take some time, if possible, instead of spending time online, instead of endlessly chatting or using your phone to call and say nonsense. Instead of every time affliction arises, you go find someone to confide in, vent, or turn on music, watch a movie, or go shopping, spend time being a true meditator, which is sitting and looking at affliction. Sitting, standing, or walking is fine. In general, dedicate a special space to look closely at affliction. But if you don't have any space at that time to go anywhere because you're arguing with him and he's sitting next to you in the car, where can you run? So at that time, ask to stop. Close your eyes and return to your breath or look at your affliction. If you feel too weak at that time, your energy is dropping, then you shouldn't look at affliction. Just return to your breath. And you must practice this thoroughly. Whenever you feel negative emotions rising up, about to burst out in words or actions, then according to your training, return to the familiar object, your breath. Breath is a very safe anchor. You can rely on the tip of your nose, your lips, the philtrum, or some other benign object that's present outside. But breath is an object that's always with you, and it's a very dynamic object. It changes. Each breath is constantly different, so when we connect with our breath, our mind becomes alive and also awakens to recognize the problem, because we only focus on one fixed objective. When we connect with our breath, we forget with the external objects. We only focus on our breath, so energy is restored, afflictions subside, and we start switching back to a gentle, calm channel, a channel that understands us. And if we are a meditator, we must practice this until it becomes second nature. A meditator doesn't just diligently sit in meditation. A meditator must always take care of their afflictions. A meditator must always be present with themselves. That is a good meditator. A good meditator still has afflictions, but takes care of them and handles them skillfully, or always detects the presence of afflictions promptly. In places where we are free to live the way we want, even if we live with a few other people in our family, we can still negotiate with them or persuade them that first they can give us that space whenever we practice, not disturb us, not start conversations or make noise, for example. Or we can persuade them to practice with us. That is the happiest thing, because when many people practice together, the energy is very strong and inspires each other a lot. So, in the space that we can control, you should practice slowing down so that you become calm. Calmness starts from slowing down, and everything happens accurately. When we reach out to lift a cup of tea, we are very aware of it and want it to be more accurate. We slowly reach out and then lift the cup of tea. we feel the cup of tea in our palm firmly, I know very well that I am lifting the cup of tea, and the cup of tea is in my palm. I know very well that this cup of tea is now cold. It is no longer hot, for example, and I start drinking. I know I just drank tea, and I also know clearly whether the tea tastes sweet, rich, or bitter. Then I start putting the cup of tea down. That process is very slow, and when we pay attention to that process, our ability to concentrate increases, our observation increases, and our mindfulness increases, our stability increases, our enjoyment increases, and happiness also increases from their equanimity as well. But when we grab onto an object, tension increases, desires increase, annoyance increases, hopes and expectations increase, and then reactions of resistance and retaliation, when it doesn't please us, also increase. In exchange for a little feeling of pleasure and comfort, but it's not certain that when we achieve B, we will be as happy as we think. It's not certain that if we grab that object, we will be as happy as we think. So don't count your chickens before they hatch. Every moment, whatever we come into contact with, or whatever object we interact with, is important. Albert Einstein, a brilliant physicist, said something very accurate with the wisdom of Buddhism. He said that there are only two ways to live in this life where you can maintain balance, peace, and happiness. The part about balance, peace, and happiness is what I added. There are two ways to live in this life. One is to consider everything in this life as unimportant. Nothing is a miracle. The other is that everything is important. Everything is a miracle. So if we think that sitting, we're drinking tea is unimportant, if we think that sitting and enjoying a sunny morning is unimportant, if we think that breathing is unimportant, centering ourselves is unimportant, if we think that sitting and listening to the sharing of our loved ones is unimportant, then whether we have material comforts or spiritual comforts, it doesn't matter. If we can live like that, our lives will be balanced if we consider everything as equally unimportant, treating everything the same. Everything is moderate. Nothing needs to be cherished or preserved. Then you'll be balanced, content, and experience less suffering. We suffer because we prioritize one thing over another, focusing too much on one thing and neglecting other things. For example, we overemphasize work and relationships, and we neglect basic activities and essential needs. Alternatively, you can choose the second approach. That is, everything is a miracle, everything is wondrous, everything is important. If you believe that working to earn money, conquering others, gaining rights and status in society is important, or that relationships are important, then you must also consider arranging flowers, preparing a meal, cleaning the house, or telling a story, connecting with loved ones, helping neighbors, as equally important. Then your life will begin to balance and you will find peace and happiness. So, which approach will you choose? Surely we'll choose to consider everything as important, right? If we choose to consider everything as important, how should we prioritize when we encounter and have to do so many things each day? Therefore, we need the ability to manage tasks and time. We need to organize everything in a relative order, so we know which tasks are important to do first and which are less important to do later. But here it's said that everything is important. Of course, if you don't have great wisdom yet, then you'll still see that something is slightly better than something else or more important. And in reality, there are urgent and important tasks that affect lives and the rights of others or the community. So we prioritize those. Some things we can put lower on the list a little bit. But even if we consider some things more important than others, we still treat everything with respect, kindness and dedication. So before you go to the office or go to work, at home, you have some things to do like bathing, cooking and cleaning. Like talking to your loved ones at home, do it with all your heart, mindfully and with appreciation. Talking to loved ones is a condition for happiness. Arranging flowers to create more beauty in the room in the house gives us the opportunity to pay attention to every movement. Every gesture is a chance to be mindful, an opportunity to reap happiness. And so, whenever we interact with something, that thing is the most important. Important means it's the thing we can wholeheartedly focus on. Of course, when we first start practicing, it's not easy to do. Our minds are already programmed with this is important, and if that is important, this person is more important than that person, this task is more important than that task. So, for the time being, we can't possibly see every task or every person as important. Then we should try to remember that whatever task we're engaged in at this moment is important. And whoever we're interacting with at this moment, that person is important. Important means we invest our whole heart and soul. We interact with that person without being impatient or rushing to find someone else or switch to another task. However, as mentioned, it's only relative for someone who is just starting. We don't yet have enough wisdom or courage to focus 100% on whoever we're interacting with in the present moment. After, we may still have many things to do, many things to grasp, but perhaps we also need something very important to be settled. To be at peace in the present moment, to rest and relax, to be enjoying the happiness I've accumulated. And dwelling in the present is a skill you have to practice to acquire, and it's true. Humans inherently possess the capacity to dwell in the present, but we get caught up in the collective consciousness. Everyone runs, so we run. Everyone grasps, so we grasp. Everyone desires, So we also scramble to desire. Gradually, we drift away from that inherent ability to dwell in the present. It's already within us. So now we just need to awaken it. We need to reorganize our lives a little. Firstly, we need to, like a tree with too many branches, we need to prune the branches that aren't good, aren't beautiful, that don't produce flowers or fruit, that are weak and feeble. We cut them off to focus on the strong, essential branches. That's how the tree can shoot up high. The Buddha also suggested that we occasionally take stock of our possessions and review our workload, so we can practice letting go. And when we let go a little, we become free, have more time and energy to focus on what remains. And then our focus and presence will be heightened and deepened. From there, we can dwell in the present. And when we dwell in the present, interacting with any object becomes deep and lasting. And when we talk to someone, we pour our heart and soul into the conversation. Whatever we do it wholeheartedly. Then we dwell in those objects. And when we dwell, we suddenly realize something. That these objects bring us so much happiness, so much joy, even in the smallest of things. Suddenly, even cleaning the house feels joyful. Brewing tea feels all joyful, and playing with the kids feels great. Before, we found it annoying, trivial, and unnecessary. But now, we suddenly find it joyful because our mind is ready to accept this moment. It doesn't want to seek other moments or other objects anymore. Its content, it accepts this moment. As Thich Hansen says, the famous neuroscientist at the University of Massachusetts, his research team made an observation after studying the human brain. They found that the state of human happiness isn't in the category that people previously thought, like when we satisfy or something or achieve it. It's in the category of being content with what we have, not when we're dreaming of what we don't have, or when we grasp something new. When we grasp something new and exciting, it's exhilarating and exciting, and it makes the nerves tense, excited, even fearful and anxious. But when we return to cherish and preserve the conditions of happiness we already have, the nerves are very calm, very relaxed, very comfortable, and there's a very deep happiness because it knows that these are the precious things that we've been neglecting and abandoning for so long. The Buddha said we often live in a neutral state called equanimity without feeling anything. But when we have awareness, when mindfulness arises, when we stop, then naturally equanimity turns into pleasant feeling. It turns into happiness. And even if we're in unpleasant feeling, a very difficult sensation to endure. But suddenly, when we have awareness, when we stop, when we have mindfulness, then from the channel of unpleasant feeling, it switches to the channel of pleasant feeling. That is a feeling of happiness, even though we're experiencing some events where experiencing some unpleasant things, but we no longer focus on them. Instead, we focus on the conditions of happiness that we have. When we focus on the conditions of happiness that we have, we naturally become happy and temporarily forget those unpleasant things. Of course, sooner or later we'll resolve those unpleasant things, but before resolving those unpleasant things, let's just enjoy the happiness we have, or in the process of resolving the difficulties, the unpleasant things, we always remember that I am happy, so I will resolve these sufferings. It sounds a bit wrong, doesn't it? But it's true. That is, while we're resolving suffering, we think we only have suffering. While resolving, we think we only have undesirable things. But what's the truth? The truth is, we have so many desirable things. The truth is, we have so many conditions for happiness. So when we have mindfulness, we always remember that undesirable things, suffering, are only a part of life. We have so many conditions for happiness, so many desirable things. So when we solve an undesirable problem, with the awareness that we have many desirable things, our attitude will be different. But when we solve an undesirable thing and we forget all the conditions for happiness that we have, our attitude will be different. Then we'll be very stressed. We'll want to solve, eliminate, and get rid of the undesirable object as quickly as possible, because we believe that only when we eliminate those undesirable things, will we be healthy and light and happy. But do we necessarily have to eliminate it to be happy? We can just leave it there and turn to other conditions of happiness. It's not everything. Those undesirable things are not everything, just a part. But the Buddha also said that when we turn to cherish and preserve the happy things we have, enjoying them, our energy will be full again. Our perspective will now be different when we turn to those undesirable things. We'll see that it's a small matter, not worth anything. Just let it coexist with us. No need to eliminate it, no need to nag, no need to punish it. And that's not suffering or pain. It's natural, because sometimes it's cute and sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes we receive desirable things and sometimes we receive undesirable things. Undesirable things are a natural part of life, and often it comes and goes. The nature of each object is impermanent, so let nature clean up for us so we don't have to. So even if we're having undesirable conditions and still be happy as usual, it sounds easy, but in reality what happens is that every time undesirable things happen, we pour all our energy into those undesirable things. Solve, chop, 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 because we believe that we must solve this to survive. That's the problem. We'll never solve it all, folks. Never. And there are even things that we have to spend 5 or 10 years solving. So does that mean we'll spend our whole lives drowning in suffering. Life is a series of desirable and undesirable things. After this, there will be another. So don't try to eliminate the undesirable things. Instead, be peaceful, return to enjoy the conditions of happiness that we have. And you must believe that our ability to accept is enormous. And it's only great when we truly have peace, tranquility, and awareness of the conditions of happiness. Then the acceptance is very great, and it can accept those undesirable things to coexist with the desirable things without struggling, without reacting, and no longer seeing it as suffering or pain anymore, seeing it as an obvious part of life. So Thich Nhat Hanh said that contentment will make us happy, but if we're not content, we still feel lacking, still feel restless, still scrambling to search, we can't be happy. Contentment here means I cherish the conditions of happiness that I have. I return to enjoy the conditions of happiness that I have. Many people are afraid of the word contentment, afraid that if they're content, they won't be able to develop any more, afraid that if they're content, they won't be able to sublimate anymore, afraid that if they're content, they won't be able to become some special person or have some great career in the future. When we become a special person or have a great career in the future, that's a matter for the future. But now we should grasp the present first. If we don't grasp the present and aren't happy when there are so many conditions for happiness, how can we be sure of the future? In my opinion, the future is of the same nature as the present. How you live in the present is how the future will be. You can change the goals of the future, but you haven't changed your personality, your way of life. So, no matter how many more conditions you grasp in there, you won't be happy later either. But if you change your lifestyle, live mindfully, carefully, and thoroughly, live to cherish and preserve the happiness you have, then your future will follow suit. You'll have as much happiness as you have conditions for it, so don't worry too much. Live carefully in the present. Contentment means I treasure and enjoy what I have. I don't want anything more, at least not right now. I don't have to wait for something else to be happy. Right now, a cup of tea is enough. It's not like drinking tea requires music to be happy. If there's no music, I won't drink tea. That's weird. So enjoy what you have wholeheartedly, and you'll find happiness. Another miracle is when we are truly at peace, truly living deeply in the present, and see that happiness surrounds us, including hearing birds chirping, watching the sunrise, and enjoying a cup of tea. Those things we used to see as insignificant, thinking they were normal or ordinary, become extraordinary with the power of awakening and the light of mindfulness. We see them as extraordinary, special, sparkling, and incredibly beautiful. Just invite consciousness and alertness back. Just be at peace, staying in the present and suddenly we look back at things we used to find unattractive, boring, and ordinary, but now we find them incredibly beautiful, wonderful, and valuable. Often, those things are still great, but our bored mind occupies our consciousness, and our desires demand more, higher, and more attractive things that the object can't provide. So we think the object has lost its value. The object may still have its value, but our mind changes our desires and demands, making our view of the object inaccurate. So when we meditate, we calm those delusions down and let our minds live in a pure state, bright and free, and we'll see everything accurately again. We'll see the everyday things we take for granted become precious and wonderful. And when we are fully present, the Buddha said, we'll naturally reduce our desires. In other words, the reason we desire so much is because we can't be at peace. We don't remember that we have many conditions for happiness, and we don't even have enough time to enjoy them. So why do we want more? Mostly it's due to excessive fear and worry, thinking that if we don't grasp anymore, we won't be safe enough. If we don't accumulate more, our lives won't be sustainable, so we have to prepare far in advance. It's like the journey of human life is just preparation. Everyone probably thinks they live 200 or 300 years. So they plan to spend 100 years preparing, but never truly living. And when we truly live, we shall naturally live slowly and firmly. Living slowly doesn't mean living carelessly, but living mindfully, cherishing, preserving, and fully enjoying the happiness we have. Then, naturally, we'll let go of unnecessary desires, because we know that when we start to desire, we leave the present, abandon ourselves, and live vaguely, lacking care and responsibility for the things around us. So we must be very careful every time we make a wish, unless those wishes are truly urgent and important, truly indispensable. And even if we make those wishes, we still remember that we have conditions for happiness, and we just want more. Or when we make those desires, we have to handle them so that they doesn't affect our ability to enjoy the happiness we already have. If we set expectations that we don't have time to drink tea, to read a good book, to exercise, we don't have time to step outside and connect with nature, with the earth and sky, no time to connect with important family members and friends, no time to understand more about this magical world, then what's the point of wanting more just to live a life of luxury, exchanging it for so many values? Would we trade that? Therefore, if you want to let go of some of your desires, the best and most effective way is to return to dwelling. If you can't dwell for a month or a year, try choosing a week to dwell. Spend a week living slowly and mindfully, a week of meditation. And if a week is still too long, shorten it to 2 or 3 days at the end of the week to live really slowly in a space that you actively control as slowly as possible, even when you walk, even when you lift a cup of tea, even when you turn on the tap. Even when you take a shower and you know that in the process of psychological therapy, treating the wounds in the heart, the exercise that helps patients stop the delusional, disconnected thoughts with the past to touch the wound again, the way that helps patients to feel refreshed is to soothe their nerves, which is to force them to move very slowly, live very slowly. Every movement and gesture happens extremely slowly, and enjoy it. That is, they anchor their mind, they hold on to their mind in every movement and gesture, because their mind at that time is wandering aimlessly, very pitiful. But when the mind settles back on the body, it connects to the body and begins to appreciate what is happening on the body or around it. Then naturally the mind becomes peaceful. And when a person is in a state of panic with no support, in a delirium, in a frenzy, in a surge of emotion, when feeling lonely, offended, attacked, when abandoned, the mind has no support, because the object that the mind relies on is that person. But now that person is unfaithful. Now that person turns around and attacks you. That person is no longer lovely, so how can you rely on them? Or you rely on your phone, but the phone isn't always something to rely on, and relying on it only drowns you further. It continues to drain your vitality. So you need a point for the mind to rely on, and there's nothing better than the breath. That is your own body, and you can only do this when, in normal times, you must train your mind to have the skill to return to relying on yourself, on your breath, on your body. A person who is depressed and has wounds in their heart, if they haven't trained the skill of returning to dwelling, returning to relying on themselves in the present moment, then at that time, wanting to escape the monsters in their heart is extremely difficult and requires a lot of support from fellow practitioners, people who meditate. Some people with special abilities are able to pull them back to reality, but relying on someone, depending on someone to return to reality doesn't last long. Only we ourselves return to relying on ourselves can we maintain that feeling of peace and happiness for a long time. So when you meditate correctly, it means that you are aware that meditating means establishing a mindful life in which every moment you try to live as mindfully as possible, so that you can always connect with yourself, be at peace within yourself, be at peace in the present moment, and every meditation exercise leads to this result. But if you meditate only to detach from reality for half an hour or an hour, of course, you need to meditate. But when you meditate, it doesn't mean you don't know what's happening around you. What's the point of meditating? Meditating is to sharpen concentration. Having concentration for what? Because when you have concentration, you can pay attention to objects it needs depth for the mind to pause, pay attention, or connect profoundly. Otherwise, the mind won't easily latch onto objects. flitting from one to the next. But someone without focus has a restless, chaotic mind, glancing superficially at everything. They only scratch the surface, so we need the power of concentration. That's why we shouldn't spend too much time owning our focus unless our mind is too erratic, delusional, or too scattered. Then we need to meditate several times a day to cultivate concentration. But concentration itself is worthless if it doesn't support something else, mindfulness. It aids mindfulness so that when mindfulness observes an object, it recognizes its value. Concentration's value, at best, reduces thinking and headaches. That's why half an hour to an hour is necessary. Even increasing it to a few hours a day to develop concentration is necessary. But the most important time for practice is the time outside of formal meditation when we reconnect with life. How we connect with life, our attitude, and how we handle situations in life are what truly matter and reveal the quality of a meditator. So the way to know if we're meditating correctly is if we know how to slow down. We know how to be present, how to pause, how to look deeply. We cherish and protect the happiness we have. Someone who meditates correctly knows how to maintain their composure and energy, not getting caught up in attractive objects. They can accept unpleasant and adverse situations with ease. They know how to step back and observe their internal reactions, and from there, the quality of life improves, happiness increases, and peace increases, relaxation and lightness increase, and suffering decreases. Even when suffering and pain arise, they are embraced and handled gently so they don't harm ourselves or others. Thank you all for listening.